Hello. Today we're going to be doing Excel Lab number 7. You can get to Excel Lab 7 on course content, and then Excel Labs, and then Excel Lab 7. And there are two spreadsheets that you need to get, Swimwear Data L1 Start and Swimwear Data L2 Start. And I'm going to be referencing a slide in the PowerPoint instructions as well. You don't necessarily need to download it, but you may want to just in case if you want to refer back to it. And I'll point that out when we get to that part of the lab. So this is the spreadsheet called Swimwear Data L1 Start. And when you open it up, you're going to be on this screen, which shows documentation. And basically what we're going to be doing today is generating some scenarios for swimwear. We're going to come up with a new kind of swimsuit. It's a racing suit called the TZ Swim Skin. And we're going to generate some scenarios based on sales for this new product. So if I click on the second tab, I'm going to see some data that I can use to make projections. And so here's a projected profitability and break-even analysis. Over on the left we have some assumptions. So if you're going to launch a new product, you have to do some sort of a cost-benefit analysis. And when you're doing any kind of cost-benefit analysis, you have to make some sort of assumptions about what you're going to be selling. And so over on the left we have assumptions regarding the number of units we're going to sell, the selling price per unit, cost of goods sold, that's COGS, distribution costs, and then some fixed expenses like marketing, payroll, and estimated overhead. So that's all the stuff on the left, and these are just numbers that are plugged in. So this is what we think we can do for this new swimsuit in terms of sales, budgeting, etc. So over on the right are some projections that are based on the assumptions, and the projections are based on formulas that are based on the cells that are in the assumptions. So we have sales, which right now is $389,850. And if I click on this cell and I look at the formula behind it, it's just multiplying C8 times C9. So it's taking the sales in units and multiplying it times the selling price per unit, and that gives us a net sales figure of $389,850. We have cost of goods sold, which is the sales in units times the cost of goods sold, and that gives us, if you take sales and subtract cost of goods sold, that gives us our gross profit. Then down here we have variable expenses. So this distribution costs, this is sales in units times the $5 per unit for distribution. That gives us a figure called the contribution margin. So if we take gross profit and take out the expenses, our contribution margin is $147,600. And then if we take out the fixed expenses, then we get a total of $2,600 for marginal income before taxes. So if we want to look at sort of the bottom line figure for launching this new product, we have a marginal income before taxes of $2,600. And for a new product, anytime you can make money the first year, that's generally a good thing. But a lot of times in accounting they talk about something called the break-even point. And the break-even point is the point at which you neither make money nor lose money. Okay, so based on all the figures on the right are based on the assumptions that are on the left. So we're going to make $2,600, but that's assuming that we sell 3,000 units at a price of $129.95. So, you know, given all of these assumptions, if I'm say a product manager, maybe I know that my sales guy always tends to overestimate how much he can sell. So if my sales guy tells me that he can sell 3,000 units, probably he can only sell 2,700 units. Okay, that would be kind of the worst case scenario. So if I change my sales projection from 3,000 to 2,700, I can see that over on the right all of these figures change, and if I look at the bottom line, the marginal income before taxes, I'm now losing $12,000. Okay, so if my sales estimates are too optimistic, I might lose money. The other thing is cost of goods sold. So let's say my manufacturing guy has told me that he can make it for $75.75, but he's underestimating costs, and really it's going to cost about $80 per unit. And so if I change the cost of goods sold to $80, again, my revenue is the same, my gross profit is the same, or I'm sorry, no, it's not. My sales is the same, my cost of goods sold is increased, so my gross profit is lower, and if I look down at the bottom, my marginal income before taxes is lower. All right, so by playing with these assumptions, I get different values. And what I would like to try to figure out is, rather than changing the assumptions one at a time, I'd like to get some sort of a table or a matrix of different combinations of values so that I can look at various scenarios. And one of the things I might want to figure out is what's my break-even point. So given let me change cost of goods sold back to $75.75. So given a selling price of $129.95 and a cost of goods sold of $75.75, how many units do I need to sell to break even? Okay, well with 3,000, I'm making a little bit of money. If I change this to say 2,900, then I'm losing a little bit of money. Okay, now my marginal income is negative $2,300. So the break-even point is somewhere between 2,900 and 3,000. All right, maybe I want to figure out exactly what that is without having to plug in a bunch of different values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to construct something called a data table, and the data table is going to let me look at a bunch of different values at once. And to do a data table, there are essentially two ways to do it. There is a one-way data table where you're going to look at you're going to change one variable. Okay, you have one thing that you're going to change, and you're going to look at changes in that variable on a number of different outcomes. Okay, so that's one way to do it. The other way to do a data table is called a two-way data table. And with a two-way data table, you're changing two things at once, but you're looking at one outcome value. So you can either have multiple outcomes and vary one thing, or you can look at one outcome value and vary a couple of things. And so that's where we're going to start. So I'm going to first create a one-way data table. And let's say that for my one-way data table, I want to change the thing that I want to vary is my sales in units. Okay, so I've got this cell over here. This is C8, and this cell holds my sales in units. And my sort of baseline is 3,000. Okay, let's say I want to look at some different scenarios, and I want to start at 2,750. So let's say my worst case, let's say 2,700. My worst case scenario is I'm only going to sell 2,700 units. Okay, so I'm going to type in 2,700 here in column J. I'm just going to, let's see, I'm on cell J7 here. All right, so let's say my worst case is I'm going to sell 2,700, and then I want to go up in increments of 50. Okay, so I'm going to start by going to the next cell, J8, and I'm going to type in equals J7 plus 50. All right, and that's going to give me 2,750. And then I'm just going to take this set of values, and I'm going to take that formula and I'm going to drag it downward. And let's say I'm going to go up to 3,500 units. Okay, so I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna drag that formula down until I get 3,500. So I've got a bunch of values ranging from 2,700 to 3,500 in increments of 50. So 2,700 is my worst case scenario, 3,500 is my best case scenario. All right, so that's going to be my input variable. All right, sales units is going to be my input variable. Now I'm going to have some outcomes. So let's say I want to look at the effect of changing the number of sales units on a few different outcomes. So let's say I want to look at sales revenue, cost of goods sold, and let's see, marginal income before taxes. Okay, so we're going to have those three variables: sales, cost of goods sold, and marginal income before taxes. Okay, so column K is going to be my sales column. The way that I'm going to make this my sales column is right here in cell K6. This is going to be my column header. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reference my sales figure. Okay, so my sales figure, sales revenue, is in cell H8. So what I'm going to do is up here I'm going to type in equals H8. All right, and what that does is it puts in that number, whatever number I've got in cell H8, it puts it here in this cell K6. All right, so this is going to be my sales column. However, if I look at this cell, this doesn't really make a lot of sense as a column header, right? If I close the spreadsheet and come back to it in a couple of weeks, I'm going to see this number at the top of this column, and I'm going to think to myself, what is this number? So as a column header, this isn't what we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to say Format Cells. All right, this is where we would typically go if we wanted to change cell formatting to, for example, change the number of decimal places, add dollar signs, whatever. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to click on the special category. Okay, so here I'm going to click on special. No, I'm sorry, not special, custom. I'm going to click on custom. And here is a spot where you can choose different custom formats for numbers. But instead of typing in a custom format, I'm going to type in some text. So here in this cell, I'm going to type in double quote sales. Sales revenue. And then an end quote, and then I'll hit OK. All right, so now I've got my cell says it says sales revenue. However, if I click on this cell, it's still referencing H8. All right, so the value in the cell is still H8. However, I've given it this custom number formatting, and really my custom format is just a text label. Okay, so I'm referencing sales revenue, and I've given it the label of sales revenue, but it's still referencing this number cell over here. Now I'm going to do the same thing with cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold is in cell H9. So I'm going to type in equals H9. Again, it puts in my number figure, 227,250. I'm going to give it a custom format. And this one I'm going to call double quote COGS for cost of goods sold. And then finally I'm going to do marginal income before taxes. I'm not doing that. I'm going to reference the cell again. So I'm going to type in equals H19. That's pointing to my marginal income before taxes. And I'm going to give it a custom format, and I'm going to call this column marginal income. All right, so now I've got three columns: sales revenue, cost of goods sold, and marginal income. So what I'm going to have at the end is I'm going to have a table, and the table is going to have different values along the left side here. The table is going to be, or that column is going to be talking about sales units, and I'm going to look at where each of these sales units, what each of these. So now we're ready to fill in the table with our values. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to select this whole array of cells, starting at J6 and going down to M23. Okay, so this whole box. And I'm going to go to, on the menu, Data, and then What If Analysis, and then Data Table. Okay. And when you're making a data table, you can put in either a row input cell or a column input cell or both. This data table is what they call a one-way data table. We're only varying one thing. We're varying the column, we're varying the sales units. And our sales units happen to be arranged in a column, so we're going to be putting in a column input cell. Okay, so here's the place where we can enter the column input cell. And our column input cell is going to point to the sales units cell, which is over here in C8. So my column input cell is going to be C8. All right, then I'll click OK. And so when I do that, it fills in my table with values. And I'm going to select these values and give them the accounting number format so that they actually look like numbers. And so you can see here with sales units of 2,700, I'll have a sales revenue of 350, cost of goods sold of 204, and I'm going to lose $12,000. With sales units of 3,300, I'm going to have revenue of 428, cost of goods sold of 249, and I'm going to make about $17,000, and then a range of values in between. So if I look at the marginal income, I can see that at 2,950 units, I'm making $140. So my break-even point is right around 2,950. You know, maybe one or two units shy of 2,950. So the way this works is I've got my data table. Column J is pointed to sales units, which is in cell C8. So what we're basically doing is we're taking these different values, okay, from 2,700 to 3,500, and Excel is sort of behind the scenes plugging those values over here into cell C8. And every time you plug something into C8, it changes all of these figures over here on the right. And so that's what we're seeing in columns K, L, and M. So if I were to plug in 2,850 into cell C8, then my sales revenue would be 370, my cost of goods sold would be 215, and my marginal income would be negative 4780. All right. And the other thing to just point out is all of these numbers are based on plugging different numbers of sales units in, but they're also based on all of these other figures in here. So if I decide that, or I realize that my distribution costs are actually going to be $6 a unit, I come over here and change that to $6. Okay, what I see is if I change my distribution cost to $6, it doesn't affect my sales revenue or my cost of goods sold, but it does affect my marginal income. So with distribution costs of $6, now my marginal income is somewhere between my break-even point is somewhere between 3,000 and 3,050 units. Okay, I'm going to turn my distribution cost back to $5. Okay, so my original values. And now I'm going to come down here and create a two-way data table. So let's say that this time I don't want to look just at sales units. I want to look at my selling price and also my cost of goods sold. Okay, so I want to look at two variables. So my selling price, my baseline selling price is $129.95. Let's say I think that might be a little bit high. So let's say I'm going to start at $119.95, and I'm going to no. Let's start at $114.95, and I'm going to go up in increments of $5. All right, so I'm going to start with $114.95, and I'm going to add $5. So that's going to be I've put $114.95 in cell J27, and then I'm going to say J27 plus 5, $119, and then I'm going to drag this down, and let's say that's a little bit high. Let's say I'm going to go up to $144.95. Okay, so I'm going to go down $15 and up $15. Okay, above my baseline price. And then let's say I want to look at cost of goods sold. So let's say I'm going to start my cost of goods sold calculations at $65.75, and I'm going to go up in increments of $5. Okay, so I'm going to do I put $65.75 in cell K26, and I'm going to add $5 to that. So I'm going to say K26 plus 5. And my cost of goods sold, I'm going to take that up to, let's say, $85.75. All right. And so I want to look at different combinations of these things. Okay, sales price and cost of goods sold. Well, now I'm varying two variables. Okay, my first example, I only varied one thing, and that was the sales units. This time I'm varying two things. And so if we're varying two things, we can only look at one outcome. Okay, we can only look at one outcome variable. So let's say I want to look at, let's say, marginal income before taxes again, all right, because I want to get the break-even point. So to do a two-way data table, I'm going to come to this cell at the intersection of my row and my column. All right, so this is cell J26, and I'm going to reference whatever outcome variable I want. So this time I'm going to do equals H19. Okay, and that's going to be the marginal income before taxes cell. Now, as in my first example, this is not a very effective label for this table, so I'm going to give it a custom format. I'm going to right-click and say Format Cells, and I'm going to give it a custom format that says, double quote, marginal income. And I'll say OK. All right, so again, my custom label says marginal income. The cell points at H19. All right, now to fill in this table with data, I'm going to select it. Select that range from J26 through O33. Again, I'm going to go to Data, What If Analysis, and Data Table. And this time I have both a row input cell and a column input cell. All right, so my column input cell is sales price, so that is C9. And my row input, I put that in the wrong place. C9 is my column input cell. Okay, so my column input cell is C9. And my row input cell is cost of goods sold, so that is C11. Okay, so my row input cell is C11. Column input cell C9. And then if I hit OK, I come back and look. I've got values now in my data table. Okay, so if I give it the appropriate formatting, the way I would interpret this is to look at the intersection of the row and the column. So if I have my baseline scenario, a price of $129.95, cost of goods sold is $75.75, then I get a marginal income before taxes of $2,600. Best case scenario, if my sales price is $144.95 and my cost of goods sold is $65.75, then my marginal income is going to be $77,600. Worst case scenario is a low sales price, $114.95, and a high cost of goods sold, $85.75, and that would give me a loss of $72,400. Okay, so that's the worst case. So, looking at data tables can give us different combinations of outcomes based on input variables. All right, and so this is basic data tables in Excel. I'm now going to go and open up the second spreadsheet, and we're going to do some even more complex scenarios using the same sort of analysis. So go ahead and save this, and then open up the other spreadsheet.